And Roxana, what we'll do, if just give us one moment, and we will work to move Mr. Mattis over. I got him.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. We have Mr. Mattis with us and our commissioners. Welcome to the Ventura County Transportation Commission for Friday, May 5th. I will call this meeting to order and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I see Commissioner Chavez has his flag in his background. If we can, what's the question? If we could do our Pledge of Allegiance, if you could lead us, that would be wonderful.
Yes, Madam Chair. If you all join me in standing and reciting after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And with that, a roll call.
Chair Long.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay.
Yes.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña.
Here.
Commissioner Chavez.
Here.
Commissioner Edmonds.
Here.
Commissioner Enegren.
Present.
Commissioner Huber.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Judge.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins.
Here.
Commissioner Sobel.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Tavares.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a quorum for our commission.
And if I could, Madam Chair, very quickly, no county supervisor is paid to participate or attend these meetings.
Thank you very much. Next up is our public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No, Madam Chair, no public comments were received as of the appointed time, 4:30 last evening.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to Caltrans report. Mr. Tavares.
Yes, thank you very much. Director Kettle, commissioners, I'm Tony Tavares, Caltrans District 7 Director, providing this month's update on the Caltrans projects. We currently are working on approximately 50 fully funded projects in Ventura County. They total to almost $900 million. About $600 million of that are projects currently in the design phase, and close to 200+ million are projects that are currently in construction. We provided a project list, which should be in your packet. And I'd just like to highlight a few of the projects on that list that are significant for the county. There are two projects in construction. The first one is State Route 23. It's a $91 million project. It has funds from SB1, which allowed us to deliver this project. It's about 50% complete at this time, and it's a 8-mile segment of the freeway through Moore Park and Thousand Oaks. So it's making good progress on that project. I would like to say I did recently meet with the city manager of Moore Park, Mr. Troy Brown, on April 13th to discuss the project and other issues in Moore Park, and had a very good discussion and conversation with the city manager and his staff. Look forward to enhancing that partnership between Caltrans and the city moving forward. And we appreciate all the work that the city is doing along that corridor as well. Thank you. The second project in construction is the US 101 pavement rehabilitation project at the north end of Ventura County. This project is also an SB1 funded project. It's allowing us to rehabilitate the pavement, bring it up to a state of good repair, And it's about a $48 million project. So excited to be able to make these repairs to the existing infrastructure to continue the ability of people to utilize these very important travel ways, if you will, to move goods, move commuters, move people to their doctor's appointments, to their schools, and to work. And so the project is moving forward on construction as well, and making good progress there. There is another project I'd like to highlight. It's on the design page. It's project number 8. This is on the Pacific Coast Highway. It's a $64 million project to repair a portion of State Route 1 due to a series of winter storms starting as far back as 2015. There was damage, slope failures, and this project is near Point Magoo. It involves installing 2 retaining walls for a total length of about 800 feet to repair this section and also ensure the safety of the roadway and the safety of the travelers on that roadway. That completes my report. I'm always open to take any questions from any of the members.
Thank you so much. I see Commissioner McDonald's hand up. You are on mute.
One of these days I'll come into this century and figure this stuff out. I apologize. Thank you, Madam Chair. I periodically get asked by some of my constituents if there's been any discussion of improving the 101 westbound to the 126 eastbound transition. Right now it throttles down to 1 lane, and people are concerned that as the area grows that, you know, it might need a wider transition that could carry more vehicles. Has there been any long-range discussion in Caltrans about that yet?
You know, I'm not familiar with any discussions on that location, but I will definitely go back to my team and talk to our planning team and see if that is in our forecast, our 10-year or 20-year forecast.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the report.
Sir.
And I can chime in on that also, Commissioner McDonald. Oftentimes those responsibilities for projects like that, because it is adding, recognizing the growth in traffic and congestion, that responsibility actually falls on us at VCTC. It's a capacity, it's a capacity project. With that responsibility does fall back onto VCTC and our role in funding projects out of the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program. So you'll recall that we are just getting ready to update our countywide comprehensive transportation plan, and we will take that input as that you're receiving from your constituents as concerns about our growing congestion problems.
Thank you, sir. And I was afraid you were going to say it would fall back on the city of jurisdiction, which would be Ventura, and that they would be highly enraged at me for projects in their community. So I appreciate you looking at that.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. Commissioner Huber.
Madam Chair, thank you for the update. I always appreciate Caltrans participation in our Ventura County Transportation Committee meetings. I just wanted to say thank you for acting quickly to address concerns from myself and my colleagues regarding the 118/23 overpass. My office and Director Kettle were contacted to be part of the 118/23 Suicide Prevention Task Force. I look forward to working with you to develop solutions to this problematic area. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Commissioner Huber. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have just a base overall question for Commissioner Tavares. Would you be able to tell me, as kind of a newbie here, where I could find all of these projects in Ventura County, so that if I want to know more, or my constituents want to know more about what's happening, what's not happening, what's funded, where's the money coming from, I would be able to go?
Yes, on our Caltrans District 7 website, we have a link to all of our projects. What I can do to make it a little simpler, because sometimes our websites are not the most user-friendly, I'll have my staff put together an entire package of all the projects that we have in the planning, design, construction phases, and share that with you and all of the commissioners if that would be
Great.
helpful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Edmonds?
Yes, I have a question on the 101 going north, the $48 million project. Is there a projected time that it would be finished?
We do. There is a projected time. Let me offhand. I believe it's still. It won't happen this season. It'll still run into at least next summer, the next construction season. So we're looking at the 2022 construction season to be completed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Commissioner Sobel?
Thank you. Yeah, so recently there's been a couple of reports that have come out about higher pollution levels for lower income and marginalized communities. And I've been thinking about this for a couple of years and kind of looking around the counties and driving where there are walls along our highways, which are both for sound, but also turns out it serves as pollution, where there are not. So I noticed like on the 126, on parts of it in Ventura, there are walls, but for instance, going through Santa Paula and part of the outskirts of Fillmore where the speeds are higher, there are not. And there's some parts I know in Santa Paula where you can barely have a conversation. That's how loud it is. And I'm pretty sure that the pollution levels would be much higher for all those residents there. So now that I understand from Darren that this may be under our auspices, I would like that to be in part of our future planning, to take a look at that and make sure that we're keeping everybody quiet and healthy.
Thank you. Also, is there any other hands up? If not, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Tavares. Myself and my office have been contacting and discussing a safety study in the location of the 126 in Piru. And so appreciate the study on safety there, where there's been some major accidents. Also where the harvest build is with Limonera, looking at Halleck. We'll be having a meeting hopefully just to study that and make sure they know we're looking at putting a hospital system in that location, and with emergencies and traffic and so forth. It's better to be talking about this earlier than later, and want to make sure that there are some solutions for our community members. So thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure all the other commissioners knew that as well. Thank you. So with that, if there's no further questions for Caltrans, we'll move on to the commissioners' reports. Are there any commissioners that have reports besides the agency reports that we'll do at a later time?
I'm not seeing any, Madam Chair.
Okay, I don't see any. So then we'll move on to you, Mr. Kettle, for your executive director report.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And may I ask our clerk, please recognize that Commissioner Matt Levere has joined the meeting for attendance purposes. So just a couple things, commissioners. First of all, I want to make a clarification / correction. Last meeting, we had an item that dealt with Class 1 bicycle trails, and we had a very good conversation, and a question came up regarding the ability of e-bikes being on Class 1 trails. We want to make sure that it's clear there was some confusion on that. There is state law that does allow e-bikes on Class 1 trails. There is a limit as to their speed, but I think in our last meeting, we may have referenced the fact that we didn't believe that was the case, that e-bikes were permitted on Class 1 trails. So for purposes of making sure the record is accurate, there is state law that allows for that. A couple of other real quick updates. I wanted to share some news regarding the Freeway Service Patrol. It's going smoothly. Our next beat, the final beat 3, which is the segment on the 118 freeway through Simi Valley and into Moore Park, will launch on June 1. So those of the part of our county that through Simi Valley and Moore Park will see that service starting soon. It has been, the first 2 beats have been just wonderfully successful with great feedback from people that have the service has helped out. And just to show it's not just about tow trucks and fixing flat tires, we had one of our drivers spot the start of a fire in a wood pile on the Conejo grade earlier this, actually at the end of last month. And the truck driver, our tow truck driver, pulled over, had a fire extinguisher and water, and was able to douse the flames. Anybody that knows anything about the Conejo Pass and the number of fires that have started there and made their way towards Malibu, I don't know how much he saved the day on that case, but it's certainly a really good story for us. So we're really pleased with the level of service that we're getting from our freeway service patrol. Metrolink Saturday service is scheduled to start at the end of this month. It's looking like that service, which will be 1 train in each direction into Los Angeles and then back out, will start right after Memorial Day, or actually the Memorial Day weekend. And at this point, it looks like we're only going to be able to get it to the Moore Park station. We have funded all the way up through Ventura, but as commissioners may be aware, the segment of the rail line north of Moore Park is owned by Union Pacific Railroad. And so that takes a little bit more work to get coordinated, and that's what we're in the middle of. So that's where things are with Metrolink Saturday service, but we will be promoting that with Metrolink to make sure that people know of this new opportunity to use Metrolink on Saturdays. And Madam Chair, that's really about it for my update, and I'm happy to take questions. I do see a few hands up, so I will let you call them on your order.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobel.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% clear on the e-bike thing, but I've been recently become an expert as we've just purchased 2. And so, and I noticed like the trail from Ventura to Ojai is posted. So class 1, it assists you up to 20 miles an hour, the electric motor. After that, it's all you. Class 3 assists you up to 28 miles an hour. So it's much easier to go much faster. So, so as I say, there are places that are posted class 1 and class 3, and e-bikes, some are very easy to see which one there are, which one they're not. I'm sure there's not going to be people out checking, but there is that difference. So we need to kind of be clear on that.
Right. It's really a very much those enforcement issues happen at the local level, and we just knew we had we didn't have clarity on that last month, so we want to make sure that the commission was aware that we had followed up on it.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Darren, for the quick updates. I just wanted to, one's a comment and one's a question. So in comment for the Freeway Patrol Service, I just want to commend them for their work. Within its first month and a half, I had observed one of them, pretty much helping assist traffic as debris was laid out on the 101 freeway on the grade. And we all know the grade could be a very interesting challenge going up or down. So I commend them for doing that and commend them for taking that initiative to stop the fire, because a little spark can go a long way, and as we see many times. In regards to the Metrolink Saturday service, has times been set up yet as to when our AM trip is going to be and PM trips?
Yes, I don't have the specifics. We will get the word out, but it's going to be sort of a mid-morning departure as of right now. I think it was right around 10, departing Moore Park and leaving Los Angeles around 4:30 or so to return. That's the schedule, and my hope is that we actually try to get a second train. We have adequate funding to make that work, but we do have to work with LA County Metro as our partner on the line, as well as Union Pacific for the slots.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
And Commissioner McDonald. You're on mute again.
You're muted. Thank you.
It's that
Okay, I've
horrible
only had 2
button.
cups of coffee so far, so I'm not quite functioning yet. Darren, I was gonna ask if there's any way we might be able to get county fire to do a blurb on our driver extinguishing that fire. You know, we're starting the beginning of fire season. They're saying it's gonna be a horrendous fire season. And this is something I'd like to get out to the public of how excellent we did in terms of our service, and probably saved millions, if not billions of dollars from potential damage by this fire. It was, you know, but for our driver putting that out, it may have been horrific in terms of events. So I don't know, it's a little bit late, but maybe county fire would be willing to say something about, hey, it's going to be a bad fire season. And as an example, here's something that happened within the last 30 days. Be vigilant, everyone, and do what you can to stay safe. Something to that effect.
That's a great idea. We'll work on something and coordinate with county fire and our own social media about the work that was done.
And Commissioner White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Darren, Brian, you and I think together, because that's the first thing I was going to say is I think we need to get that information out. We do so many great things, especially with that project. And another thing that Darren reminded me of is that there's a lot of new bike lanes in Ventura, and tomorrow there's going to be about a 10-mile ride looking at those bike lanes from the city, and it's going to take about 2 hours. So if we can take about 2 hours out of Darren's weekend, he can join us on his bike. Does he have a bike? I can't remember. But anyway, that he can join us and get out there and see what's going on in the city of Ventura with all the new bike lanes. And there's going to be quite a few newer bike lanes on that project too. So just want to remind everybody about that. That starts tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the North Bank area. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner White. And with that, that's all the comments for or questions for the executive director. We're going to move on to the agenda. Are there any additions or revisions?
No, Madam Chair, no additions or revisions.
All right, and that moves us on to the consent calendar. Are there any questions from our commissioners on this item?
Just recall, Madam Chair, that Mr. Mattis needs to make a remark.
Yes, Mr. Mattis, this is your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to some recently adopted laws, it is necessary an amendment. The director's contract on the consent calendar. I need to identify the terms of the change for the record. And item 8F on your agenda today is an amendment number 4 to Mr. Kettle's contract. This amendment, if approved by the board, would provide for both the cost of living increase that the commission is considering for all employees, as well as a 3% salary comparison merit adjustment. And with that, Madam Mayor, that's the report for this item. The matter can remain on the consent if that's the commission's desire.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that clarity. And I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, if there's no discussion, I would move approval of info consent.
Madam Chair, that I will just mention that Commissioner Sobel does have a hand raised.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not quite sure the order, but I would like to pull item 8E. I have some comments and questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. A motion. Well, let's first talk about 8E right now. Apologize, Commissioner McDonald. Let's just make sure we get the answers to that. So go ahead. Who would be responsible for this, Darren?
Yes, myself and Mr. Mattis. We're happy to take questions from Commissioner Sobel.
Okay, Commissioner Sobel, go ahead.
All right, there's several here. Thank you very much. First, in general, I'm sure this is kind of make sure that we compare to other entities who are trying to do the same thing in terms of legal muster, because I know this kind of stuff gets challenged. So, yeah, on page 29 of the notices of trespass says incidents of trespass on VCTC property are to be reported to the executive director or the executive director's designee. And I don't know, that language sounded odd. I'm not sure why it can't just say reported to the VCTC, and then internal policy would be that goes straight to the executive director. But yeah, I'm just not sure if people understand what that means.
So
Mr. Mattis.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, the language of the executive director and the executive director's designee is specific to make it clear to members of the public under the trespass policy who the responsible party is for VCTC for these matters. Since homeless individuals have property rights in their belongings, the case law that relates to these types of policies makes it clear that you have to have very clear directions and policies that apply when materials of homeless individuals are removed from an encampment. And so it's not sufficiently defined to simply say report to VCTC. We need to have an actual designated individual.
So if a member of the public's gonna make a complaint, they have to figure out who the executive director is and go directly to
No,
that person?
they can make a complaint to VCTC, but the action on the complaint needs to be taken by the executive. It needs to be under the guidance of a specified person. That is also a circumstance that allows, say, the individual whose materials are confiscated to know who to speak to within the organization by position.
That makes sense. The notice of trespass, the sample is there. Will they be at least in Spanish as well?
I'll defer to the executive director, but yes, that would be the plan.
Yes.
Thank you. On terms of the site inspection, it mentioned that, we would work with either county sheriff or local police. It'd be great if when those things happened, depending that we take, the county services or homeless services person along as well. Is that something we can do, or?
The short answer is yes, Commissioner Sobel. We've been doing that as a matter of practice as we've tried to voluntarily work with those trespassers on location. So that would continue to be our practice.
Well, should we document that because it would read, I mean, I think it would make it kind of a more humane policy if we actually acknowledge that we're going to attempt to do that.
We can incorporate that in. I think that does not present a problem. I think the biggest challenge we have is we have, as a matter of practice, we utilize the county's homeless staff regularly in this, and we get to the point where we're actually needing to move them because they've not worked with homeless staff already, and then previously. And we are trying to coordinate with public safety. So it adds one more into the mix. We certainly we want this to be a humane program. We've taken a very humane approach as it is. So it just adds another level of coordination. But that's not something that I think is a real stumbling block for us. County staff, the county homeless staff has been extraordinary to work with. I think they will probably do everything they can to work with us in that case.
Okay, so that would be great. So that's under section 3, item 1, just a little, and county services. I appreciate that. And
sure.
Then, and this is a kind of a curiosity question, because knowing that at least here in town, actually in several towns, I've noticed this, some of them are quite permanent structures. So after there is a removal process, who would be in charge of kind of disassembling a site?
So VCTC has a contractor that we use for these types of purposes. The nature of what is considered, Mr. Mattis can speak to this probably better than I can, the nature of what is considered personal property. While there may be what looks to be something fairly solid structures, that's not considered personal property, is my understanding. And so we would just simply, take those more somewhat looking permanent structures down and dispose of them.
So that's part of the contractor deal, that it may be kind of a substantial job, but their goal is to get the site back to normal.
Yeah,
okay.
Back to level surface, correct.
Great. And then just page 33 talked about kind of mitigation efforts. And I don't know if we do this. I know here we're kind of complaint driven in town, but it'd be great if there's some kind of periodic or systemic thing where people are going out there, periodically while people are just getting set up versus a complaint thing where after they've been there a long time. So that would be kind of a nice thing that either we do or Watershed or the city does. I don't know, but to try and catch it earlier rather than later.
Certainly, the sooner we can approach those that are trespassing, the better. We do count on our local jurisdiction. I think commissioners are familiar with the staff resources we have here at VCTC, so we really rely very much upon our local jurisdictions to give us the heads up, and then we try to be as quick as possible to respond.
And then I think so we asked this question in the branch line conversation. So then when we do have a new operator for the Santa Paula branch line, they would be somehow part of this whole mechanism.
We certainly hope to have strong coordination with a future operator. That is what our intent and our hope is. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, is there any language modification to the trespass policy, Mr. Mattis?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we can amend Section 3 to incorporate the current practice of consulting with the county's homeless task force as we proceed with these procedures.
And then therefore we would be able to approve this?
Yes, the commission can take action on it now with that addition.
Madam Chair, I would move approval of info consent with the addition of Mr. Mattis's language into the item.
Well, one more question that I have for Commissioner Ramirez.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No worries.
Thank you. Just really quickly, I'm sorry, I had somebody at the door. I had to step away for a minute. Can you just, does the Boise v. Idaho decision have any impact on what we're doing here today? If you know what I'm talking about, that homeless folk can't be evicted off public property unless there's a place to take them?
Yes, I can speak to that. And I apologize if my connection is not coming through clear. I'm not seeing it on my end, but please let me know. So we did look very closely at the Boise decision. The Boise decision for the rest of the commission is a decision that places restrictions on cities and counties with regards to the removal of homeless encampments. It does require a very similar process structure to what we've put into VCTC's proposed trespass policy. There are some cases that are very specific to transportation agencies, such as VCTC. There's a case out of Berkeley involving BART. There's at least one other case that both treat transportation agencies differently than cities and counties, in the sense that transportation agencies don't have as part of their core function the provision of housing for homeless individuals. And so we have modeled this policy off of the policy that was adopted by BART in the city of Berkeley to address homeless encampment issues. And that policy itself has been upheld by the courts already. And that is in the same time frame that the Boise decision was decided by the Ninth Circuit. And as the commissioners may be aware, the Supreme Court declined to review the Boise decision about a year ago.
Pretty tough when there's no place to send people, but it's
Exactly.
Everywhere. Yeah. I know that I attended a webinar on homeless encampments in the watershed that was put on by the State Water Board, and it's slightly easier there, but all the same issues apply. Just need more options for people. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, is there any other questions from commissioners? I want to make sure I give opportunity. No? Okay, so Commissioner McDonald, I take your motion for the approval with the amendment on 8E. And can I get a second? Commissioner White will give me the second. Thank you for the peace sign. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner Levere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, so that motion is approved. Thank you. Next up is our legislative update. And we have Darren Peshka on.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. I'm Darren Peshka. I'm the program manager for government and community relations here at VCTC. There's a number of items on the legislative update this morning, but as a matter of time, I am going to focus on our recommendation that's on your agenda. And that is that the commission adopt a support position on Senate Bill 790. SB 790 has to deal with wildlife connectivity mitigation credits and advanced mitigation. SB 790 was introduced by Senator Henry Stern, whose district includes much of eastern and northern Ventura County. This bill would require the Department of Fish and Wildlife, in consultation with Caltrans, to provide compensatory mitigation credits to support planning and modification and projects on the state highway system that improve local and regional habitat connectivity. Over the years, as climate change and development have altered the landscape of California, wildlife connectivity has gotten more and more attention. There's a number of reasons for this. One of them is to promote genetic diversity among species, and also it's to prevent collisions between vehicles and wildlife on roadways. In our own area, wildlife experts have been studying and tracking the mountain lion population in the Santa Monica Mountains for many years, including in the area along the US 101. And that's because of the obstacles that the mountain lions face in trying to cross the 101 to get to new territory. In 2018, VCTC started studying alternatives to improve the US 101 on a 27-mile stretch from Thousand Oaks through Ventura. That work is continuing, and VCTC staff believes that SB 790 could provide the project with another tool to facilitate mitigation measures. There's, in your agenda packet, there's an analysis of SB 790 that was prepared by the commission's state lobbyist. And you'll notice on there that the bill has already received broad support from agencies and groups across California. So today staff is recommending that the commission adopt a support position on SB 790. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Darren. Are there any questions in regards to Senate Bill 790 or any other legislative updates? I see no hands, and therefore
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I see Commissioner Chavez has a hand up.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Chavez, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Darren, for the presentation. Just a quick question. Would this be able to, because I believe they were also looking at the Highway 23 as an overpass crossing as well. Would 790 be able to assist in any of that funding, or is this only going to be more towards the 101?
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Kettle on that, just because of my still developing knowledge of some of our highway systems.
Thank you. So the nature of 790 is it's a statewide measure. There have been a couple pieces of legislation related to wildlife corridors. One is very specific to the Liberty Canyon area. 790 will be able to be utilized on any state highway project. So any place that we would be looking at some form of wildlife corridor connectivity, this legislation would be supportive of that. It may translate to funding. It may translate to quote unquote credits that allow us to mitigate in the future. So if a project were to be built, it qualifies as a credit towards future mitigation. So there's a couple of different ways that the bill could be used should it become law.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. I just totally support this. It is so horrible to see one of our large animals destroyed on the highways, as well as so dangerous for the driver. So I really support this. And I hope it's not too late for our mountain lions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? With that, I would like to get a motion to approve staff recommendations.
Madam Chair, move the staff recommendation.
I'll go ahead and
Okay,
second.
I have Commissioner Ramirez was a first, and I'll take Commissioner Tremblay as a second. And if that's good, and with that, we'll have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner Levere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, and that motion.
Madam Chair, you've
Moving
done.
on to item number 10, I have Martin Erickson and Jenny Eddington.
Good morning, Chair Long, members of the commission. I'm Martin Erickson, the Public Transit Director for VCTC. I'll be presenting this item, the VCTC 2021 Title VI Program Update. There is a detailed staff report that was included with this, as well as the draft Title VI program attached as a separate document. Chair Long, this item does require a public hearing. We did not receive any public comments at this point for this item, but I would ask if we could open the public hearing now as I start the item.
Yes, thank you. And I will open the public hearing right now.
Thank you. The Title VI program update is one of the numerous responsibilities VCTC has, and it really stems from the 1964 Civil Rights Act to ensure that there is non-discrimination in the areas of race, color, and national origin on all federally funded assistance from the FTA. Before you is approving a 3-year update of the plan, and it also includes the public participation plan and the language assistance plan. Essentially, we just want to ensure that in the provision of public transit in Ventura County, that there is no discrimination that occurs, and that we have a very open and transparent public process. If you've been on the buses or you've been to transit stations, you can see that there are Title VI notices posted. It's a responsibility we take seriously, and we are constantly looking to improve upon our efforts in this regard. And again, this public hearing today and this process will culminate the update of this plan, which then will be submitted to the FTA Regional Civil Rights Office and the FTA. Just wanted to go over that and see if there are any questions from the commission on this. I do want to note my staff's work on this, particularly Jenny Eddington in the department. This was the first time she had worked on this and really was jumped into it and immersed herself in the details.
I do not see her on.
No, she is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She is not.
I was just acknowledging.
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
She is in. Yeah, she's an attendee, so
Yeah.
she got the proverbial verbal pat on the back. And Commissioner Sobel does have a hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sobel, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I probably should read it more carefully, but I was a little confused about the language about how soon we respond to complaints. So it said there'll be 15 days request for more information, but I didn't see, I don't know, it seems like if somebody complains, we want to get, respond quicker than the 15 days, but I think I just didn't read it carefully.
You know, there's a formal process that we do follow, that's reviewed by the FTA when they do their triennial audits every 3 years. And I think that's the maximum time that's allowed. We do try to respond certainly more quickly and try to address and resolve any complaint that comes before that. But those are the generally adopted guidelines, the maximum amount of time that it should take. And it's part of that is just so there's a documented process statewide and nationwide that people can follow and know who to report to. And again, the complaint forms are in English and Spanish. And like I said, it's updated per the federal guidelines every time there's a change to those guidelines also. But we do generally, as a rule in my department, I try to say that we respond to complaints within 24 hours. And I think most of the time we try to maintain that, but that's certainly the goal that we have moving forward.
That's good news. Thank you. The other
Thank
thing
you.
I kind of read with interest, it got sucked into the language issues and the top 3 languages. And I was surprised. Well, there's kind of 2 different sections that address it. So one place it listed Tagalog as our number 3, but then another place it talked about Mixtec. Just doing English and Spanish kind of makes sense, but it listed some partner agencies that we work with, for example, CAUSE. And if we are going to list things, it might be useful to put in MICOP in there as a organization we work through to get the information out, because I have a feeling that they're probably substantial numbers who use the transportation services, and so they should be in that pipeline whenever we're trying to get out into the community. So if we are going to list them there, like CAUSE, and I think there was another one, I think it'd be useful to go ahead and add MICOP to that list.
That's something we certainly can do, Commissioner Sobel. I appreciate your input.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner questions? Are there any public comments? In hearing none, then I will close this public hearing, and I will ask for a motion to approve staff recommendations.
Chavez moves.
Thank you. It's first by Commissioner Chavez. Can I get a second?
Huber, second.
Thank you, Supervisor Huber, for your second. And with that, if there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner LaVere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, so that motion is approved. Thank you very much, Martin and Jenny, for your hard work on that. Next is our fiscal year 21-22 Transportation Development Act unmet needs. And we have Claire Grasky here.
Yes, Madam Chair, Claire's going to go ahead and she's going to be sharing her screen briefly with the presentation. And just as we introduce this item, everybody, I think, is, we've been talking about unmet transit needs for a very, very long time. It's a part of our process that we go through, and it comes out of the Transportation Development Act. Why I mention this is it's been just about a month ago, former Senator James Mills, who is the primary author of the Transportation Development Act, also known as the Mills-Dita-Alquist Act, passed in 1972. He was the author of the Transportation Development Act, James Mills, out of San Diego, and he passed away at the end of March. And so, Madam Chair, I just thought, recognizing the connection to our unmet needs process and the Transportation Development Act, wanted to mention that, and also that if we could adjourn our meeting today in his memory, we would not have the public transportation system that we have anywhere in California had it not been for Senator James Mills. So with that, Madam Chair, if you could just remember that as we close later today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Good morning. I just want to confirm that you see the presentation and not the presenter's slides for the.
We see the we do see the presentation, Claire.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go over the unmet needs, the process, and the results of this year's findings. So just want to reiterate that this is an annual process. So we continually take feedback throughout the year, and then we have a focused campaign to solicit feedback at the end of the year, beginning of a new year. And we hold a public hearing in February. We collect all the feedback, and then we analyze, evaluate, and respond to it. We push it out to the operators if it's recommendations that are applicable to them. And then today we are recommending the findings to the commission. And then if they are approved, we will implement any recommendations that are applicable. And then we also submit this information to the state. So I'll just go over again what exactly an unmet needs, read the definition. So in order for something to be considered an unmet need, it needs to be new or expanded service. So a drastic increase to service hours, or a significant change to a route. And in order for something to be potentially considered an unmet need, it needs to meet the 15 comment threshold for fixed route, sorry, that's missing, and 10 comment thresholds for dial-a-ride service. And then there's a secondary criteria that the service must be reasonable to meet if it meets that threshold. So the service needs to have enough vehicles in order to operate the service. It can't cause any reductions in any existing service, and it's important that a transit vehicle can operate on the streets that the service is requested for. And then if the service is instituted, then the fare box needs to be evaluated in accordance with the TDA statute, which I'll note are paused for the time being, but in the future, that would have to be the case. So as I mentioned, feedback is collected year round. We take it through a variety of mediums, phone calls, email, website, social media. In non-pandemic times, we get a lot of comments from events that we staff. But then during our concerted effort, we had an online survey. We held 2 virtual community meetings. We had a public hearing. All of this was publicly noticed. And then we did a large social media push to let the public know about these events and to get their feedback. So the results this year, we got comments from over 125 people. This led to over 160 different comments. This is, admittedly lower than, especially last year, which had a significant number of comments, more in line with maybe about 3 years ago. But I'll note that the proportion of comments to the number of people riding our service is about the same. So our ridership has gone down, and our comments have as well, but the proportion of comments from our riders is about the same as it has been. So our top requests this year are the same as they generally have been for the last couple years, which is a request for service between Fillmore and Moore Park, and then service from the Santa Clara River Valley to Santa Clarita. Other requests we received was expanded service into LA County, multiple destinations besides Santa Clarita, a number to downtown LA, some to the west side or into Santa Monica areas, a number of different areas in LA County. We also receive comments often, and this year was no different, for increased hours on the Coastal Express. There was also a number of comments that were requesting service that had been cut due to the pandemic. And then we also, common request that we got this year as well is countywide Sunday service. So sometimes we get these comments specific to certain operators, but a lot of times we get just general requests for Sunday service throughout the county. And so this year there were no requests that met this this threshold of the 15 comment for fixed route service. There really weren't any comments for dial-a-ride service improvements either. So therefore, there are no findings. Though I do want to mention that, and I mentioned this at the hearing a couple months ago, you know, we last year had received over 15 comments for both service to Santa Clarita and service between Fillmore and Moore Park. And we began the planning process for this, and then the pandemic hit. So I think that that we understand the priority for operators is to reinstate their service that has been cut. But this gives us a bit of an opportunity for us to plan for these types of services. They're complicated services in that they are multi-jurisdictional. We need multiple agencies to work with us to implement these routes. They're quite costly, and we don't necessarily have the buses to run them at this point. And some of the terrain is a little bit difficult to navigate. So they require a bit of planning, financial planning included. So this really does give us an opportunity to work with our partners and to plan for these services while the operators are focused on reinstating their services. So I just want to make it clear that these are still on our radar, things that we are still planning for and hope to implement in the future, even though we did not receive any comments that met this 15 comment threshold this year. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Sobel, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just curious that outside of this process, if there's some kind of mid-process need, like a new employer pops up or something like that, is there a way for some part of the community or something to rate, say this is an unmet need right now?
Sure, absolutely. So oftentimes we get comments like as soon as the process, the comment period ends, and we just apply those to the next year. But we're always taking comments on an ongoing basis, and there are times, especially requests that are maybe a little bit easier to implement, maybe comments regarding a bus stop or bus stop improvements that sometimes can be done outside of this process that are able to implement a little bit more quickly. So yes, we take it, we get often lots of requests for new developments and things like that. We take those on an ongoing basis, and we do always apply them to this, to the unmet needs as well. But that doesn't mean that we don't try to work with whoever is requesting them in the interim as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chavez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Claire, for the presentation. Just a quick comment and then a couple of questions. In regards, I want to appreciate staff's work on this. I was able to attend one of the workshops, and the information being put out and then the public's participation was great. I understand that there are the criteria in order to meet unmet transit needs. And one of them on your slides was in regards to that you can't reduce the service. But is it possible for operators to kind of do like a trade-off if a particular route isn't doing well or doesn't have the ridership, if they can divert some of that service hours to another line or another creation of a line? Or does that go against the rule?
Well, we can't, it's not within our authority to make any sort of operator reduce any service. And we, can't, with this definition, require that. But it is up to the individual operators. I know the operators continuously look at their system performance. Gold Coast in particular has service standards that look at their low performing routes. So in theory, they could, if they found a need that was higher than one of their existing lower performing routes, they could in theory do that, but VCTC does not have the authority to ask them to reduce a low performing service with one of these requests per the definition.
And
if I could just real quickly, Mr. Commissioner Chavez, add to that, keeping in mind that the unmet needs process is only for all, we treat it differently. But actually, we go beyond what is required. The unmet transit needs process, for all intents and purposes, impacts only 4 jurisdictions in our county. And it's the city of Moore Park, the city of Camarillo, the city of Santa Paula, and the city of Fillmore, because those 4 jurisdictions can still use money for streets and roads. So in the case of Gold Coast, as an example, we take the feedback, but it is entirely upon their authority, because every penny of TDA, LTF, local transportation fund dollars goes to transit now. So it is completely within their purview. So when we go through this process, while we treat it countywide as as the right thing to do, the legal requirement is only those 4 jurisdictions that it affects.
And I appreciate that, and I apologize if it came off as
no.
trying to say that VCT forced these or strong arm these people. It was just more general, trying to say with the recommendations that and the feedback that is being received by VCTC, if they can go ahead and take those steps on their own, not VCTC telling them what to do. I will also just a comment in regards to the county ride service on Sundays. I do know mainly it's more on the east side of the county that kind of shuts down on Sundays, unfortunately. That would be something positive, to be able to offer that service, especially those that now churches are starting to reopen and people go to church on the East County side a lot more. So, and then just a final comment in regards to Untrepment, this project and other projects, if staff can maybe do like a little toolkit that we as commissioners can put out to our own social media platforms so that we can get more feedback from the public. I think we all are in our own communities, we all have different roles, and I believe opening those market streams to be able to reach more people would be beneficial. So little toolkits or something so that we're able to put the word out a little bit more. But other than that, I do appreciate all of the hard work that you guys are doing to try to hold these public hearings, definitely in the age of COVID, which is very difficult. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Commissioner Edmonds.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it is so often that, Fillmore, Piru, and Santa Paula often feel overlooked, and we appreciate the energy that you're putting into getting us these needed services. So I just want to thank you very much for that. And if you need participation from anyone, please call on me, and if I can help, I will. If I can get someone else that is in a different position that you need, let me know, and I will do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Commissioner White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just real briefly, I just want to thank Claire and Jenny for the work they do on this. I had the opportunity to serve on the Ventura, the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee for a number of years, and saw this information sort of slow down. And now I see Claire and her team really picking up the information and improving public transportation, expanding the input from the public. All these things that Mr. Kettle said earlier, it runs our organization, it runs transportation in this community. So I just want to thank the people, the 125 people that gave information on it. It moves Ventura, and I just appreciate Claire and her team for getting all this information and putting it all together and really improving, public transportation. And really, I'd like to thank the local transit operators for commending them for really improving public transportation, because they're the ones that run the buses. So thank you again, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with coming out of a pandemic and with people actually wanting to travel in public transit more, it'll be interesting how our habits change with working at home and working at the office and so forth. So this is really going to be helpful leading us to. So thank you very much. With that, if there are no further questions, are there any public comments? None? Okay, then I would ask for a motion to approve staff recommendations.
Chavez moves.
Okay, Commissioner Chavez is for a first and a second, please.
Oh, second.
Okay, Commissioner Sobel is a second. And without any further discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner Levere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, and then that motion is approved. Thank you very much, Claire. Great job to all that worked on this. Next up, we have our update on the transit integration and efficiency study. And therefore, Darren, do you have anything you'd like to make any comment before we move on to Martin Erickson?
No, we can move on to Martin. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Take
Good
it away,
morning.
Martin.
Good morning again, Chair Long, Commissioners. It's a very active transit day for the commission, but I think it's actually timely that we've had both the Title VI participation plan update and the unmet needs process, two of the, I think, important aspects that my department deals with. And excited to bring this item before you, the transit integration and efficiency study. This is an update item for the commission to review essentially what we have, what we are undertaking, what the commission authorized with an RFP back in September, and then authorized the agreement with Fair Peers in conjunction with Nelson Nygaard to produce this regional transit study, this transit integration and efficiency study. And we're going to be joined by the Fair Peers team and then also a representative from Nelson Nygaard. It'll be Jeremiah LaRose from Fair Peers, Paul Jewell from Fair Peers, and James Gomez from Nelson Nygaard. And I had prepared a staff report which goes into some detail about what we are hoping to accomplish today. But essentially, the intent of this update today is to really hear from the commission. What are your thoughts in this early stage of this year? It'll probably be a 1.5 year study that you authorized for us to do. And looking back on all the things that have happened in transit and all the things that we do here in public transit, I am excited to bring this for you. I'll be doing the opening an opening slide, and after that we'll be turning it over to the Fair Peers Nelson Nygaard team. And again, the commission is going to play a very active role in this study. You're going to be you're going to hear about in this presentation about a survey that you'll be doing. You're also going to be interviewed by the consultant team. But I wanted to just touch on, I think, 3 of the undergirding issues that help drive this study. Obviously, and this is noted in my staff report, the impacts of the pandemic on public transit, both operationally and financially, have just been something that has frankly reshaped public transit, not just in California or the nation, but the entire world. And fortunately, we've again had some federal assistance that is still ongoing. And by the time this study ends, we'll probably, at least the federal assistance that's been programmed right now, will probably be starting to run out. So it's, I think, very timely looking at this. Secondly, the pandemic underscored systemic race and equity issues that public transit has always been at the forefront of. It's obviously a lifeline service for many in our population, especially communities of color or those who for whatever reason can't drive, whether it's an economic issue or a disability issue. And that has certainly been accentuated. We've been providing essential trips throughout this process, along with all the other transit providers. I think it represents an unprecedented time of the 9 operators working together, working with the county, working with the team to, to battle this pandemic. And so there's, I think, an unprecedented level of cooperation moving through this. The third item is that transit ridership, even before the pandemic, was facing some very big challenges. And a lot of those challenges were underscored in a study that SCAG authorized that was done by the UCLA Transit Group on falling transit ridership. And as noted in my report, one of the key reasons why people were probably using transit less even before the pandemic was just the proliferation and preponderance of personal automobile ownership having increased so dramatically for a variety of reasons: low cost, ease of access to a car. So again, this item is really to help set the table for you as commissioners, to give you an idea of what we're doing going forward, but most importantly, to hear from you about what your thoughts are going to be guiding this process, as well as the public's participation, the riders' participation, and the transit operators' participation. And going back to, again, June and July, we'll look at the previous direction from the commission, the prior study that was done almost 10 years ago now, and then also examining the changes that have been done up to this point. So I'll be around at the end to answer questions also, but now I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah LaRose with Fair and Pierce.
Thanks, Martin. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting us here today to talk with you about that. And just want to do a very brief overview of our project team. We only have a few of our members on the call today, but a broad experience of our team with past experience working within transit agencies. So I actually began my career as a bus operator in college and worked my way up through staff and administration at 2 agencies before moving to California and working in consulting. And we're joined by several others, and you'll hear today from James Gomez, who joins us from Nelson Nygaard, and as well as Paul Jewell, who's on the call, who's formerly CEO of Nelson Nygaard and is now a principal with Fair and Pierce as our national transit expert. So we're very happy to be bringing breadth of experience and a lot of work in prior transit integration studies here in California and elsewhere, as well as a lot of direct agency and planning experience. So very excited to continue to bring our expertise in discussing with the staff and with you all as commissioners, something we're all very familiar with. We're going to talk briefly today through the context of transit. So I'll be turning over in a moment to James from Nelson Nygaard to talk a little bit about what transit in Ventura County looks like. Most of you may be very familiar with this, but I think it's helpful to sort of frame the discussion in terms of for riders or potential riders, how many things might you be thinking about when trying to make a trip, and what that says to us about potential for better integration to better serve riders and better serve the transit service that we're delivering. We'll also be talking about, as James concludes his sort of setting the table, we'll be talking a little bit about how the actual integration study proceeds and where we have input from you all and others, key stakeholders in the study. And most importantly, I think what we want to wrap up today with is, enforcing to you how we're going to, the commission is going to guide the goals and priorities of our study. So we'll jump right in. James, I'm going to turn it over to you for our first slide here.
All right, thank you, Jeremiah, and good morning, everyone. I had the opportunity to lead the short-range transit plan for Ventura County back in 2014 and 2015, so I'm very familiar with the county and very excited to work on this project. Just starting out with looking at the existing transit operators across the county. There are 10 different transit operators that provide essential local, intercity, and paratransit service to both the residents as well as the visitors of the county. While very comprehensive and well connected, transit service in Ventura County can also be characterized as very complex. Looking across the state, really only LA County has more operators per capita. The county is also extremely expansive and economically diverse. These characteristics, along with the geographic barriers, create both challenges and opportunities in providing and executing transit and paratransit service. Next slide, please. Now, from a rider perspective, and it's not just existing riders, but potential riders as well, using transit and paratransit service requires a unique understanding of all the different unique policies in terms of fare, eligibility, as well as just service design. For example, paratransit service, which is intended to be complementary to fixed route transit, it differs in terms of availability and eligibility policies across the county. And the table on the right indicates some of those differences. So this is just one of many aspects that will be analyzed as part of the ties. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Jeremiah.
Thanks very much, James. You know, and just to underscore, there are many subjects here that we'll be looking at. It's not just the network service design, although that's perhaps one of the easiest, I think, to start with in terms of understanding that, you know, in Ventura County, there are a number of great transit operators and great transit options, and many trips will work very well for current riders. But as James mentioned, for newcomers or people who are interested in trying to use transit, whether that's because they, you know, understand the importance of transit from a climate resilience standpoint, or if they have a need because they don't have another transportation option, it can be difficult to get that started, and that difference can vary tremendously whether you have the flexibility to take a trip when the transit agency has it scheduled, or if you need something different like a paratransit option, in which you'd have to really plan ahead very differently than maybe just walking out to a bus stop and catching the next bus that comes by. So we'll talk a little bit now about the process of the study, and then we'll get into what are all the subjects that we're looking at beyond just the actual network of service. So we're at the very beginning of the process here. We had our kickoff a few months back with VCTC staff and a meeting with what we're calling the operator working group. So that is staff representatives of the agencies such as Gold Coast Transit District and the cities that are participating and that operate transit service. So in this early stage of the process, we are gathering information to understand the gaps and opportunities, get a sense for what the similarities and differences are between not just the transit service delivery, but all of the operations and the, you know, the really technical details in the background that staff work so hard to make service work every day. So we'll be seeking a lot of input from our operator working group during this phase to make sure that we have the right information to identify those gaps and opportunities. And as we work through, I'm not entirely sure you can see my mouse, but as we work through kind of this middle section of gaps and opportunities, which is the phase that we're in now, that's also our moment to really gather feedback and input to guide the study to help develop the priorities and the key opportunities. So we'll be, you know, in addition to speaking with you all today, gathering input from each of you over time through surveys and interviews. We'll be conducting targeted community focus groups with you know, focused on disadvantaged communities, advocacy groups, people who can really tell us where the greatest need is to improve transit on the ground. And pulling all of this information together through the course of the process to identify what those gaps and opportunities are, and to develop a series of strategies that can inform what some future for transit might look like. Now, transit integration is a spectrum, and right now Ventura County is doing a great job at a lot of elements of that spectrum. So you could think of, we have 9 or 10 agencies, depending on how you look at it, delivering service today, but they're not doing that in a bubble. There are already mechanisms through VCTC and the Transcom group and other opportunities for those agencies to coordinate with each other and discuss, and there are opportunities that they've already undertaken to collaborate, you know, collective procurement of equipment, or you know, there's a countywide website to help you find your bus and navigate the transit system. So those are all really great steps along the scale of integration. The furthest end of integration would be some version of all of the agencies coming together as a single agency to deliver transit. And we are not coming into this study with any recommendation yet, whether it's more in that direction or less in that direction. That is the purpose of our evaluation of alternatives, where we will develop strategies across a number of categories. And in doing so, we're looking at a number of different aspects of how transit service is delivered. So there's the financial aspect, opportunities for funding and revenue streams that can support transit and how that may be different depending on whether agencies are doing that individually or collectively. The physical assets and technology systems that power transit. So we're literally talking buses and facilities for repair and administration, the technology that goes on those buses, and the back-end technology that gets information out to customers. Opportunities to improve, opportunities for staff delivering the service. And, as I mentioned, the actual service itself, so the fixed route service, paratransit, customer service and marketing. So how do we attract more people to transit and ensure that they understand the services that we're providing and the benefits that they can gain by taking transit? And the overall just governance and coordination of transit agencies to try to find opportunities to make service delivery more efficient and better use of our limited public resources. Of course, we can't pause this moment in time to conduct the study, so we have to stay cognizant as we go of other planning efforts among those agencies, among the commission, to ensure that we're staying on top of all the activities that continue to move along as we go. And as I mentioned, supplementing all of our data gathering from the operating agencies with interviews with staff and commissioners to ensure that we really understand the ground truth to identify those opportunities. Also, we can't just focus on how things are operating today or how they have been operating for the last couple of years, but we really need to keep an eye on the future. And as Martin alluded to, there's been a lot of changes in recent years, and we know that there will continue to be more changes that can affect travel patterns and demand for transit. So this is a great opportunity to explore how working more collaboratively across the county could help prepare us either for challenges or to take advantage of new opportunities that would be better served if agencies were working proactively together as opposed to trying to do some of these things individually. So certainly across the topics you saw on the last slide, we know that there are changes in California transit funding availability and legislation, and there will always continue to be that, but also the more near-term pandemic-induced changes to federal funding. Changes in climate action that are requiring transit agencies to look at shifting towards zero emissions vehicles. Opportunities and challenges for labor. There's been national commercial driver shortages across the country for several years, and that is affecting different agencies in different ways, but making it challenging to deliver service consistently. And also just the opportunity for some of our own staff to work remotely and what that may engender for better coordination across the county. Service delivery, definitely some disruptive trends, as Martin mentioned, in terms of significantly increased auto ownership over the past couple of decades, but also new options such as Lyft and Uber that are really shifting rider preferences. And equity is a really key aspect. We talked a little bit earlier in this meeting about Title VI and the requirements for having a process that the Federal Transit Administration requires, but also the opportunity to use that information and analysis to ensure that we're not just meeting the bare minimum, but really elevating people who have faced disadvantage over many decades and what transit can do to address those longstanding inequities. To reiterate the Commission's role, we're really looking for your direction as we go, and this is just the very beginning of the study, to help us define the strategies that are going to be viable for the county and deliver the best outcomes. And we will package a long list of strategies down into something more refined after we go through a fatal flaw analysis, and finally into 3 alternatives packages that the Commission can determine at the end of this study. What do we want to move forward on? What are our next steps? So as I mentioned, that your guidance in this process is really critical for us in understanding the goals and priorities of the county, of the different jurisdictions that you represent and your constituents. So we'll be sending on Monday a survey to each of the commissioners that is conducted through a web browser using menti.com. It's very similar to any other, if you've done a SurveyMonkey or any other online survey. Very similar platform, and the responses will be submitted to us, the consultant, to help us guide the early direction of the study, to help understand what objectives are high priority for each of you, to understand whether or not there's consensus or disparity among this group on those priorities, so that we can explore those ideas further with you on an individual basis and in upcoming meetings. And a little bit of a look at important key subtopics within some of those priority areas. And there will be opportunities for open response in the survey, and also going forward, lines of communication to the consultant team and staff. So here's a quick example of what the survey will look like. We have previously conducted the same exercise more or less with the operator working group a little more than a month ago, to lay out what those priorities are, and you will be receiving essentially the same questions. The wording has only been changed slightly, since you'll be doing this individually as opposed to as a group. And some examples of the questions that you're going to receive. It's just about a 10 to 15 minute survey. We'll be looking for what your perspective is on current transit service quality in the county, what you believe the most needed transit improvement is. That's an open response. Ranking 5 predefined goals. So these are goals that we've seen as consultants on prior integration and efficiency studies that we think will help frame in your mind what we could achieve with this effort, but also an opportunity for you to suggest or help us refine those goals. So another open response. And then within each of those categories, those broad categories, we drill down to 3 to 5 specific subtopics, and just looking for, in your mind, kind of a higher or lower importance for each of those. Finally, asking some questions about what you think the key challenges facing integration in Ventura County will be, so that we are prepared for the uphill battle. It's, there are always going to be clear wins and opportunities for everybody to benefit, but we also know that it's not going to be an easy process, and we want to make sure that we're thinking critically about where we will face challenges and how we can address those collectively. So to wrap up, the project team is going to continue to work as we have been on the Gaps and Opportunities report, and begin interviewing commissioners, agency, and local jurisdiction staff to flesh out our knowledge of existing conditions and get a sense for gaps and opportunities. And most importantly, what I want to leave you with is a reminder that we will be sending by email a survey to each of the commissioners on Monday, and we request that you respond to that survey by the end of the week on Friday the 14th, and that will help keep us on track for the early guidance on the project. So happy to take any questions now, and thanks for listening to our presentation.
Thank you very much. A lot going on. Commissioners, I'd like to open it up for all of you. We have Commissioner Chavez with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. And I appreciate the presentation. When is the public's input supposed to take place?
Yes, thanks for that question, Commissioner. The public input in this process, there's opportunities at the beginning where we'll be engaging with targeted focus groups, some specific key stakeholders that represent disadvantaged communities, really key interested parties in the transit space, people who have greater need. The broad public input opportunities at this stage would be commenting on our operator working group meetings, which are publicly noticed through the Transcom, and through future commission meetings where we'll be making some presentations, or staff may be giving updates in our absence. Engaging the public more broadly should follow later in the study, when we've come down from sort of the hypothetical level that we're working at now to something more clear to respond to, where we have an idea of what strategies might be workable at all, and closer to something where we have some alternatives that the public can really wrap their head around. So I think it's important to get to that level before we really start inviting very broad feedback. There's a lot of other opportunities, like the unmet transit needs process, that I think are also informing the inputs on our end in the early stage.
And I appreciate that. I'm just really excited to see this moving along and, finally getting some updates about it. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that we're making a strong statement about equity and social justice here, because that is, I'm involved with SCAG. Yesterday I became second vice president. For those of you who might not be impressed, it's not that impressive, but we are taking a look at all of the different structures of transportation and even housing that kind of confirm racial disparities, equity disparities. And so this is really important. One of the things I think, if you go to the other cities, the big cities, and of course we're not a big city, we don't want to be a big city. It's pretty easy, even on really not systems that don't look that beautiful. I would say New York subway. I've been on that. I've been on the Washington Metro. I've been on subways all over the world, really. We have Metrolink, which was wonderful when it serves what you specifically want to do. And LA's done amazing work. San Francisco has, but our folks can't get to where they want to in a quick time. And that, I think, is the big problem, because I personally would love to take public transit to where I've got to go, but I just can't get there in time and then get back home. So that, I think, makes it very difficult, makes it easier if people say, I got to get a car. I've got to spend a huge piece of my budget on buying a gas guzzler or whatever. I see people buying these giant trucks, and pretty costly to fuel them. I'm kind of just looking at the big picture here. Why can't people take public transit? So I'll leave it there. You know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez, and congratulations on the second VP position. That's huge, and I appreciate you representing Ventura County. That's
I'll be
great.
there for us. I'll try.
Thank you. Commissioner Tremblay.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and congratulations again, Supervisor Ramirez. Great work. I actually had a little bit of feedback, if it was appropriate at this point, because we're right at the start of the process. And I want to thank Mr. Erickson and Mr. LaRose for a very good presentation. It's very thoughtful. And I noticed in the staff report, and specifically on page 78, there are 3 bullets there that are noteworthy. And but I want to focus on the last bullet for a minute. Although Metrolink is not directly involved in this ties study, I think Metrolink's experience highlights some of the tension that exists between approaches. So the 3rd bullet in the staff report, it references the recent SCAG study, and it indicates, for example, that that study linked the significant growth in personal automobile ownership facilitated by low-cost automobile financing as a major reason why people were driving instead of taking the bus or taking public transit. I'll broaden that. But then opposed to that, conversely, you have an experience that Metrolink has been going through, and as part of its recovery plan process, it's been very assertive in investigating its ridership. And I just want to read one paragraph out of a recent recovery plan framework staff report. It says the stay-at-home, this is Metrolink now, the stay-at-home orders highlight the commute of the essential workers. Of those continuing to ride Metrolink during the pandemic, 71% describe themselves as essential workers. Among these essential workers, 39% work in the healthcare industry and 14% in transportation and logistics. Nearly 1/3, 32% of essential workers have no vehicle and rely on Metrolink to get to their jobs. And this is double what was pre-COVID-19, which is only 15%. And to me, I recognize that the Ventura County experience may be somewhat different than the broader Metrolink geographic area experience, but I would like to see or suggest that the consultants, that you take a look at some focus within these studies on what are the essential work, who are the essential workers in Ventura County, what do they constitute, what their needs are, and get a better handle from a ties study standpoint in what we're looking at, because I think Metrolink's experience can be somewhat extrapolated to Ventura County in terms of areas inquiry. And I know that some of this, Ms. Grasty's already focused on this and done very well in terms of the unmet transit needs process, but I think we can take some of that information and include it in this study. And speaking just as one commissioner, that's something that I would like to see. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Tremblay. And for our consultants, Tony is serving as our MetroLink representative as well, so can provide information, correct?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. I had my MetroLink hat on. Thank you.
I'm just here to make sure they know all the representation here. Commissioner Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just to follow up with Mr. Tremblay, what we see, the questions about what travel patterns are going to be, there are actually all sorts of reasons why people are going to rely more heavily on cars or less on cars, and trying to figure out the balance, what we can predict is going to be very difficult. And so it's so important to do a study like this and really do what we can to set ourselves up for success, 10 or 20 years from now. And at the board level, I'm hoping that what we'll see from this study is some sort of framework that we all can use to put in policies where we are, put those into place, policies that really would unlock efficiencies and advance equity, and do it in a way so that we're all working together and hopefully with a carrot rather than a stick. Because when we start talking about where housing is going to go, we need to make sure that that's a county-wide discussion that we have, and that everybody gets the support that they can and that they need. I'll keep that vague, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And Commissioner Sobel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about both the process and what we're going to learn from here. I think it's going to really help kind of guide us into the future. So now a few items. First, I'd appreciate maybe a definition of the word transit and public transit when we, maybe as part of the survey, because I just feel like that maybe that word is having a different meaning now and going forward. So I'd like to know kind of what we're talking about. One of in that paragraph that was mentioned previously, there was talking about the numbers that will return after COVID. And I heard a really interesting report the other day at the prices of used cars are out of the roof because a lot of people use their stimulus money to buy used cars for populations that didn't have cars in the past. So that percentage of car owners, oddly enough, even with the economic downturn, is going to probably go up as we look more into this. So that's going to be interesting. Then, in there it was talking about Uber, Lyft, and I think it was as a competition to using transportation, but I had a tour of the Family Justice Center the other day in Ventura, and so they have gift cards for Uber and Lyft when they need to get people into Ventura from outlying areas who don't have other ways to get there, or it's outside of public transportation hours. So I think possibly, public transportation agencies providing monetary compensation to people to use those kind of things instead of taking the bus might be, cost the same amount of money and move the same amount of people around. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. I didn't see it in there, but certainly I think autonomous vehicles are going to change dramatically. People won't own cars, but they'll have an account so they can use autonomous vehicles to take them around. And I'm sure that's going to have a big impact on public transportation. And then finally, I don't know, I didn't see it on there, but the Cal Lutheran Center for Economics of Social Issues, they have great mobility studies that show how people are moving around within the county, into the county and out of the county. And I think that would be very informative just to have some data from them in terms to inform this study. But again, very excited and appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to this survey, and I, like many others on this commission, sit on a variety of transportation panels. I sit on the LoSAN board, which is the regional rail authority for the Pacific Surfliner Amtrak service. I sit on the Coastal Rail Coordinating Committee, which is the rail service north of San Luis Obispo up to the Bay Area. I sit on the Gold Coast Transit District Board, which is the local bus system for Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Ventura, and Ojai. So I'm really looking forward to this survey and having the opportunity to participate in it and seeing what your end results are. And one of our big discussions on several levels is, especially when I'm on the train going into LA, I tend to look at the freeway traffic and see how many people are single occupant cars. And, how do we get them out of that car into transportation, other alternative transportation, such as the train or what have you, and make all those systems blend together? And how do we make it seamless so that they can utilize, if you come home on Metrolink, that you can catch a local transportation, either on Gold Coast or something else, all using the same media card. I know that a lot of us are looking towards doing a unified media card. And I know Mr. Kettle and I have had this discussion. So I think this is going to be an exciting opportunity for us, our county, and for our transportation system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. And any other questions from commissioners? I would just like to put in, I sit on CSAC's meetings in NACO, and the state and federal legislation that's coming out is emphasizing how do we get people out of cars and putting more infrastructure on other ways besides just the single car occupancy, funding on broadband, funding on connecting the dots. So I think we really do, this is just a perfect time to be doing this, I think, this survey, to really get a buy-in from all of our different agencies and cities as to what the needs are of this county and how we can better serve. But I do want to remind everybody that this study cannot be in a silo. The only way that we can get the best information we possibly can is by full participation. And so Monday you will get an email, and I'm really hoping for 100% participation from this commission to answer your those questions. We are the first round, and I hope, and I just ask all of you to really turn in your questions now. You will have a chance later on, but this is your first time. So I really request that everyone is able to participate, and we'll ask those that weren't able to be here to participate in this, because it's an important measure. We'll be talking more about it, but I just want to say thank you to Darren Kettle for the leadership on this, along with Martin, and I'm looking forward to getting to know all these consultants so that we can really build the future. And to think also, we have the Olympics coming. And this is also a perfect time to make sure that we have the transportation needs that we can for that, as we're working with the different counties in Southern California. So if there aren't any further questions, I would like to get a motion to receive and file this item.
Friendly motion.
Claudia de la Pena, hello. How are you today?
Hi there. Hi there. I was in transit while I was off camera. Very busy this morning driving around, but I'm at home now. And so I am very excited about this opportunity, and it is a unique opportunity to take a comprehensive look at transportation in Ventura County. And certainly I would love to make the motion to receive and file.
Thank you. And
I will second the motion, Lynn Edmonds.
Thank you, Commissioner Edmonds. So it's first by Commissioner de la Pena and a second by Commissioner Edmonds. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner LaVere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, thank you. Did we miss anyone? I see, okay, we're good. Thank you very much for the motion to approve. Really appreciate it. And it's exciting times to get to know this information. And another exciting informational item is a regional broadband infrastructure. Thank you for bringing this on, Darren, and I'll pass this over to you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Commissioners, you have a staff report that's before you. I'm not going to go into great detail repeating it. Just please make a note of it. It's really just to say that the broadband conversation is not something that's new to VCTC. It goes all the way back to the early 2000s with some early discussion of fiber in the Santa Paula branch line corridor. So there's a long history. This is before you at the request of Commissioners Parks and Chair Long. As it relates to a discussion that came up out of the County Board of Supervisors a month or so ago. With us today, we have Terry Theobald, who is the Chief Information Officer from the County of Ventura, who is going to go through a presentation, PowerPoint. So I believe he has the ability to share his screen at this point. I do see, before I go, I hand this over to Mr. Theobald. I want to make sure I do see a hand raised by Commissioner McDonald. And I want to make sure that if that's a new hand or an old hand.
No, it's a new hand, but I'm not in any rush. I've got nothing else to do but stare at walls, so I can wait till Mr. Theobald's done with his presentation.
Okay, good enough. All right, well, perfect. So with that, and again, the fact that you've had that staff report before you, I am going to hand this over to Terry and have him walk through his what the county's doing and what may be a request of us at VCTC. Terry, it's all yours. And I think we still have you muted at the moment.
How about now? I think we're good. Yes?
There we are. You're good. Thank you,
All
Terry.
right. Good morning, Chair Long, Commissioners, and Director Kittle. Thank you for having me today. This is a follow-on to a presentation I gave to the County Board of Supervisors in March. For the supervisors that are on this call, it has been updated. I'd mentioned we would have some updates in May, and this includes those. Also want to congratulate Commissioner Ramirez on the second VP position. Now that I'm more involved with the SCAG Digital Divide Group, I'm glad to have a strong voice at a higher level in that organization to help represent the county interests. So with that being said, let me get started. So I'm here at the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and we talk a lot about transportation in terms of vehicles, moving people back and forth on highways. And broadband is analogous to that because we're talking about moving information around on highways, the internet superhighway. The problem that we have in Ventura County is we don't have many highways. And we don't have many side streets, and actually our neighborhoods are pretty much dirt right now when it comes to broadband. And so one of the county initiatives is to start looking at that. And this started, as Director Kittle said, a long time ago. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. Put my mouse in the right place and it should go. So I think it's important to note that the county has actually been talking about broadband since I think 2013 or 14. My involvement in this effort began in late 2019 when I joined IT Services, and then I took over the CIO role in late 2020. The objectives described in 2019 were economic development. They were described in the county's economic vitality plan. And that covered connecting smaller business to a larger economy, telework options, and safer and more vibrant communities through smarter and safer infrastructure, and also online learning for workforce development. we were interested, the county was interested in reducing county internet costs. We are connected to 2 providers within the county, and it's an expensive proposition. We also have to pay every time we're connecting county and other government facilities, fire stations, schools, libraries, etc. We're looking to provide communication redundancy and resiliency. So when we have disasters, if we have a lot of single points of failure, and so if one of those go down, we need to go out and repair it. We're looking for another way to achieve redundancy throughout the county. And finally, and the one that became most prevalent in 2020 was closing the digital divide to the underserved and disadvantaged. And I specifically talk about the underserved and disadvantaged because there are certain people in the county that have good internet, and there are some people in the county that have marginal internet, but there's also people that have virtually no internet, can't afford the internet, and not all of those areas are disadvantaged. There certainly are a number of those, but there are some neighbors that are not financially disadvantaged and they still don't have the internet. And our goal, I think the goal of just about everybody in the nation right now is to close the divide for everybody. The approach that we're looking at, the one we started in 2019, was to build a redundant middle mile fiber system. So middle mile means that we're going to connect up to an internet point of service, and we're going to build a internet superhighway that takes us to throughout the county, that takes us into areas where we can then connect to side connections and eventually into neighborhoods. And we're talking about fiber because fiber is, the alternatives would include wireless, and wireless is still exposed to electromagnetic interference, noise. It also doesn't necessarily achieve the same performance that fiber does, but it probably will eventually get there. And an example of wireless would be 5G. You've heard a lot about that. Also, there are a lot of companies out there that provide proprietary internet solutions. So we've been partnering since I arrived anyways. We partnered with, of course, the County Economic Vitality Steering Committee. The county has engaged a broadband consulting expert, Magellan Advisors, who specializes in public and private solutions. We're a member of the Pacific Coast Broadband Consortium. We're part of the Economic Development Collaborative, and we're also part of the Southern California Association of Governments and their Digital Divide Group. There are others we're also associated with, CSAC being one of them, NACO being one of them, but these are the ones we're most active with today. There's been a county-wide collaboration effort going on since about July of last year. We've talked to, I believe, most, if not all, of the city managers. We've talked to city and county IT managers, city and county public work directors. We've also talked to the utilities because they have assets that might be of interest to us. For example, there could be abandoned gas lines. We actually talked to oil. There could be abandoned oil lines. I was surprised, although it shouldn't have been, that you can run fiber in active water lines, active potable water lines, not so much active sewer lines. And also the electric Southern California Edison, because they have towers that we can run fiber along, just like electrical wire, telephone wire. Of course, we've talked to the Ventura County Transportation Commission previously. Director Kettle's been active in our conversations at the county on this particular project. Public safety officials included law enforcement, Sheriff's Department, EMS, fire, and then of course Caltrans. And Caltrans really has changed their position recently from sort of giving us an update on where projects are to wanting to know where we want to go so that we can get a tighter connection between what we're trying to accomplish with our middle mile solution and where Caltrans is planning to do up and coming work. This map is intended to show you where all of the, and I shouldn't say all, but where we have existing fiber and also where we have planned fiber, and I'll explain the planned fiber on the next slide. Here you can see if there's green or if there's, I think it's a light blue color, yellow, those are existing fiber, purple, blue, red, those are planned fiber add-ons. We don't have all of it noted here, primarily because there are some cities, some areas that have proprietary fiber. They use it also for public safety, and they will give it to us, but we're not allowed to present it publicly. So this doesn't include everything, but it gives you a good idea of where fiber is at. When we talk about our middle mile project, which I'll give you a status on shortly, I talk about 3 alignments, and these are illustrated here with the circles. The main alignment that is the most promising for us is the one in the middle. It's got that should be orange, believe it or not, maybe a light brown ellipse around it, and it basically goes down the 126 state route from Santa Clarita down to Ventura. And it has some blue it has a blue branch off that goes down into Moore Park, and it also then has a connection up to this upper red ring, which is Ojai. The red ring basically goes up the 150 through Ojai and comes down the 33. And then the last one is the bluish color ellipse, and that basically comes from Moore Park, West Simi Valley, down the 118 into again into the Oxnard Ventura area. What we like about the 126 is it goes through Piru, Fillmore, Santa Paula, Saticoy, East Ventura, all areas that have been identified as not having sufficient broadband and also having some disadvantaged neighborhoods. Once we get down into the west end of that run, we can come across Wells, Los Angeles Avenue, come over to Santa Clara, and we're very close to Nyland, El Rio, and we can also go east up to Somas. So that we get a lot of important connections out of that run, and we'll come back and visit this a little later. The 118 run also goes right through Somas. It goes right past Nyland and El Rio. One of the big advantages we like about that is it's redundant. It gives us a redundant route to a different connection point, and it also allows us to use a existing water line. And I also believe there's some traffic signals along the route that we can take advantage of. And then the last one, and not the least important, but the reason I mentioned it's the last one is because from a prioritization point of view, Ojai has the most construction challenges. The 126 has the railway, we'll be talking about that. The 118 has some existing opportunities in it, but the Ojai route requires us to do significant construction that will take longer and cost more money. And then the impacts of COVID. So now, as a result of COVID, we all know this, there have been massive efforts at federal, state, and local levels to close the digital divide. Biden's infrastructure package, Governor Newsom's executive order for broadband. So most people these days can probably get 100 megabits. Hopefully that means something, which is pretty decent broadband connection from like a Spectrum. Prior to changing to Spectrum, I was able to get a whole 12 megabits from AT&T. Not too zesty in terms of my ability to stream and download information. So Governor Newsom's executive order pretty much said the standard should be 100 megabits for everybody that's connecting to the internet. And for our project, we're looking to set up a 1 gigabit network. So 10 times what the standard is. And there's state legislation that goes along with that, AB 14, SB 4, and there's some others all talking about funding standards around broadband. And I already mentioned the federal infrastructure legislation that's going on. So where things really started to get interesting for our project is we had done a lot of work in developing our thoughts on where we might want to do something. And then when these federal and state initiatives started, the Digital Divide Group had, SCAG's the Digital Divide Group had already been formed and was contemplating how we go about funding these types of efforts. And they developed a resolution for counties to adopt, which Ventura County adopted back in March, that LA County, Riverside County, San Diego all have adopted the same resolution that basically says we support broadband, and specifically we support broadband for underserved, disadvantaged communities. We're now, the Digital Divide Group is now working on a simplified permitting process for broadband related construction, which they would then present to the counties that are part of the Digital Divide Group, which then we could share countywide and see what kind of agreement we can get on that. And then the next thing that, and actually the most urgent thing at this point is taking advantage of these funding opportunities. So the Digital Divide Group has determined that based upon some analysis that they've done, we need a total of $8 billion, that's a billion with a B, to close the digital divide for everybody in the 7 Southern California counties. They expect to go to the federal government and get $4 billion, and then use that to leverage $4 billion from the state. And this would provide internet to every dwelling in the 7 Southern California counties. Using their calculations, I did a little napkin calculation of my own, and I'm estimating, and underline estimating, not firm, 600 million for Ventura County if we were successful in this, specifically for broadband. The Digital Divide Group feels that in order for us to make this happen, we require strong public governance to oversee the RFPs that will need to go out, because we'll need to partner with the ISPs, the internet service providers, and distribute the project funds and oversee them accordingly. And also, based upon history, we have some concerns that we may not be able to get the ISPs to reach all of the necessary areas that would fall into what we're interested in. And so some municipal projects may need to be instigated. And one of the things that's interesting about the state, some of the state initiatives is it sounds like they're reducing some of the restrictions they put on municipal projects today to allow governments, counties and cities to initiate these where needed. And I think at this point we have pretty strong support from SCAG that if this makes sense, then we'll probably need to do some of it. So now we'll talk a little bit more detail about what Ventura County's been up to. So we're seeking out federal and state grants. At this point, we're primarily working with SCAG, but there's also the CSAC collaborative. Interestingly, CSAC has asked the state for $8 billion for the entire state, whereas SCAG's asking for $8 billion for just Southern California. One of the goals here is to share existing capital improvement projects. So that would include water projects, that would include Caltrans projects, public works projects. We want to dig once for whatever reason. We could be digging for upgrading to a bike path. We could be digging for a road widening project, or we could be digging because we're going to put communication or broadband infrastructure in place. And if we're doing that, we only want to dig one time. So anybody that needs to use the hole in the ground can use it. We want to use partners to share construction costs. More about that when we talk about RFPs. And then I've mentioned the 2 groups that are there. I'm sorry, is there a question? Nope. Okay, moving on. These are estimated costs. Again, estimated cost for these alignments I mentioned. So about 6 million for the 126, 5 million for the 118, and almost 9 for the 150-33 alignments and the spurs, the ones that take us into some of the neighborhoods. Total investment is estimated at 20 million. Now it's important to, so you heard me say 600 million earlier, and now we're talking about 20 million for just these 3 routes that I've mentioned. That gives you an idea of just how expensive it is to get from a highway to the front door of someone's dwelling. It becomes very expensive to do that. We're expecting funding to come from a number of sources. Potentially could all come from federal and state opportunities, but also using existing underground and aerial assets, future projects. I've mentioned the partnerships primarily with ISPs. And if we needed to, I think the county is willing to look at some general fund funding if needed. I just covered this. So the cost of the branch lines and last mile infrastructure to the homes is estimated 580 million relative to the 20 that I estimated for the middle mile. So the next steps. So we issued an RFI for to anybody that was interested. That would include Southern California Edison. It would include the ISPs like Spectrum, AT&T, Digital West, GeoLinks, Over 30 service providers registered and downloaded the RFI. We received 14 responses. One of them was a duplicate, so it was actually 13 responses from service providers. So we haven't completed the preliminary vetting of the responses yet, but based on what we've seen so far, it looks like most of the responses are basically looking like RFP responses. They're basically saying, here's where we cover, here's how much it would cost for you to partner with us. So there weren't any ideas that came out on new, unique ways for us to solve the problem. There weren't any additional routes proposed other than what was already existing for the ISPs and the routes that we're proposing. So based upon that, we will complete our response, reviewing the responses, and then we'll be sending out RFPs for at least the 126 alignment and the 118 alignment, because those are the ones I think we can get started on the soonest. And then we would state in the RFP that we're also looking at the 150-33 alignment in case there's, or to let people know this would be coming along shortly. All right, so now I get into one of the primary reasons I was excited to meet with you today. The railway, the current Santa Paula Branch Railway, aligns almost perfectly with the proposed 126-mile segment that we were looking at. It doesn't quite go as far north as we would need to get up to Santa Clarita, but it comes pretty close. And it comes close enough that we can connect to some existing Southern California Edison tower infrastructure so that we could use aerial cable to get to the point where the railway right-of-way ends, and then we could start using the railway. Due to the mostly unobstructed right-of-way, plowing can be used for substantial cost savings. So when you go by some of these projects, you see these large digging machines that are making these very wide trenches, very deep trenches to put whatever they're putting in the ground. That can include water pipe, sewer pipe, electrical pipe, gas line. When we plow, we have a machine that has a much smaller footprint, and it basically digs a very narrow, relatively shallow trench, and we can run multiple cables into that, and it basically digs, lowers the cable, and fills in kind of as it goes. It's very efficient, and it's relatively low cost compared to the larger digging solutions that you would normally look at. We believe that if we handle the way that we go forward with this, there's an opportunity to generate a revenue stream by sharing the trench or by leasing county fiber. Leasing county fiber to ISPs or other entities that might want to use it. And the other advantage to this route is there's a relatively small number of stakeholders, meaning that we could start with a small group and work through the process of how we would implement a middle mile segment, how it would be governed before we tackle on some of these other ones. And the more we do, the more stakeholders that get involved in the process. So what I want to close with is we believe there's an opportunity for a partnership here where the county and the commission share the railway asset. We also believe there's other potential transportation right-of-ways out there that we might want to discuss down the road. And we're requesting the Ventura County Transportation Commission Board to consider this partnership and the exclusive use of the branch railway for the county's fiber project. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, Terry. This is really exciting. I know Supervisor Parks and I were talking about having this as presented to the VCTC to get a resolution similar about the support of broadband. And I'm asking, as we're doing the direction, to add that to our legislative platform that VCTC supports broadband, and that we would assist with supporting, and Darren and Mattis can help with the wording. I'm just saying the concept of making sure that we support broadband with VCTC and to ensure that we are funded for projects that we can implement the broadband as well. We don't want to have unfunded mandates, but we would like to support the project with funding as well. Commissioner McDonald, you've had your hand up for a while. If you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad you got to me. My arm was getting a little tired here. My sense of humor. And Terry, you're looking good. The commission won't know this, but Terry and I had an opportunity to work together side by side for many years in different capacities. So glad to see you again. Glad you're doing well.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in this and for a couple of reasons. In more normal times, because of my involvement in rail, both north and south, I would spend a fair amount of time on trains going one direction or another, and I would tend to make those working trips. And it would sometimes frustrate me a little bit because I would be working. I would have to time my travel, especially going into LA, between Simi Valley and Chatsworth to try and time the tunnels so that I didn't lose phone conversations or other transmission of work and so on and so forth. And yeah, I guess a little bit to my chagrin, we can send people to a space station, we can send robots to Mars and have them fly around. Yet we can't keep connectivity going in a particular train tunnel just because we've never really thought about it. I know that's a possibility. So I look forward to that opportunity in the future. And also, Terry, I just have to compliment you on the one dig concept or dig once concept. Nothing is more frustrating for a community or for people that see it, that, you know, a street is repaired, it looks beautiful, and within 6 months, some utility company comes in and just digs it up, patches it, and it just goes all to heck. And, you know, we have to start all over. So I really like that concept. And I'm glad to see that Californians are taking a more stronger look at that concept. So we can do it once and do it right. I know I had a conversation with Mr. Kettle about Rice Avenue the other last month or so, and the question was, you know, we didn't do the greatest job of paving. I said, yeah, you're right, because it's all going to get torn up with the flyover and everything else. So why sink millions of dollars into it just to dig it up again? We're doing just enough to hold it together to try and get it to a point where once it's done, and we can completely sign off and give it to Caltrans. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And Commissioner Weirick?
Yes, hi, Terry, thank you very much. I have two, one comment and one question. You know, there's been a lot of talk about this for a lot of years, and I hope we could get to some low-hanging fruit really quickly. And I think Commissioner McDonald identified one. If we can get to the, you know, let's get to the dig once, share the trunch thing as soon as possible. I mean, like yesterday, you know, I mean, I think what we need to get to is beyond talk into some actionable accomplishments in this whole process that we've been talking about literally for years. And that would be a great one to start with. And then really two questions. It's hard for me to understand, and please help me understand, why on the middle mile 150-33, why the former railroad right-of-way, Valley Bike Trail, controlled by the county parks and the city of Ojai from the 101 to the Sewell Park, why the same analysis that you just presented for the Santa Clara right-of-way would not apply to that right-of-way, since you know, half of it's, you know, asphalt, but also half of it's just unpaved horse trail to this day.
I can answer that, and we can probably put that one on me. I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I know that we've talked about this long time, and so I'm looking for where we can get something to happen as soon as possible. And the 126 look like the best place to focus our consultants' efforts and everybody's efforts on it.
I agree, but you presented the analysis in terms of the shallow trench, sure, you know, and what, as opposed to expensive aerial construction. I just wondered why that analysis wouldn't also apply to the former railroad right-of-way from the 101 to Sewell Park. That's all I'm asking.
I'm sorry. Yes. So I believe it would exactly apply to it. We just haven't done the analysis to figure out what the cost would be, but I would say it exactly applies.
So it could be a significant magnitude cost reduction in that estimate, perhaps.
It could, yes.
Okay. All right. And I never heard of before being able to retrofit water lines for the fiber optic.
Sure.
Yeah, is that, and what was the reason it couldn't also apply for sewer? I was wondering.
So I think that has to do with the toxicity of the chemicals in the line. So basically fiber's glass. It's glass in a wrapped conduit. And so potable water is really non-toxic. It doesn't have any impact on glass fiber or its wrapper. But my understanding is in a sewer line, it's possible that things that appear in the sewer line can degrade the wrapper and can also degrade the glass.
Yeah, I was thinking with modern materials technology, there might be a way of sealing against a sewer as well, but
yeah, apparently not yet.
Not yet. Okay, thank you very much. I
Sure.
appreciate your taking a look at that county right of way, but applying the same analysis to the Santa Clara right of way to that county trail. Thank you.
Good questions. And Commissioner Sobel.
Thanks, Chair Long. Yeah, this is pretty exciting. I've been on the broadband consortium for 3 years, and in that time, it's kind of like a lot of chatter, and now we're getting to a place where it looks like things are going to start to happen, which is, again, very exciting. Yeah, a few comments and a couple questions. One, yeah, just because people have talked about dig once. Right now, SoCal Gas is digging up all sorts of streets in Santa Paula. And as far as I know, they've never been approached to be part of any dig once policy. So they're not, throwing any conduit down. So I think they should be part of the conversation because, yeah, again, dig once. Also, just on some of the terminology, I mentioned the SCAG and they changed part of one of their documents, and the governor's proposal is very clear that all the language now gives a down speed and an up speed, because now that we're in this age of doing stuff and health and education and stuff like that, the down speed and the up speed matters. So we should, I think, always document both. And kind of just related to trains, I know there's a lot of conversation to get 5G in so we can make our smart highways and smart roadways. So I haven't heard anything about smart trains. I know there's been a lot of problems with, trains, the speed sensors and all that kind of thing. So it would seem that another benefit of throwing going along the railroad corridors would allow us to maybe have more advanced system on trains. And then also, it's just a statement. Years ago, it was a big conversation about making broadband a utility. I don't hear about it. I don't think there's any Senator Assembly bills around that. So I'm not sure why that is a dormant conversation, but I think it shouldn't be. And then finally, just the one question. You mentioned that you want the branch line to be a county exclusive. So I was worried a little bit when I see the word exclusive. What does that mean?
Actually, that's exactly what it means. So I was specific in my ask. It isn't, the county's asking for exclusive use of the right of way for everything. We're just asking for exclusive right of the right of way for broadband. So then what we would do is we would have control over that asset like any other public asset, and then we would be able to leverage that asset with the ISPs for their use of it, which then potentially creates a revenue stream for us to manage the municipal the municipal broadband that's in that trench. It also provides revenue for the Transportation Commission, potentially, depending upon what we are able to work out.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I am not seeing any other hands. Am I seeing that? So let me ask Terry and Darren and Steve, in regards to putting this on our legislative platform, can we do that today? Because I know that there are bills from the state and federal that are coming up. I know that there's cities that are writing letters of support. The county just has. Could you give me some feedback on that?
Sure, I can start and then Darren can fill in the missing parts. So the agenda does provide the commission the authority to provide direction regarding this issue today. And so at minimum, the commission could provide direction to actually add it to your legislative agenda if you wanted to do it. I defer to Darren as to whether you pose like they'd need to bring back conforming documents on the consent calendar at the next agenda.
Thank you, Steve. I think my preference would be is just to come back to the commission next month with a more fully thought out discussion on what we would be supporting. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, and I just don't want to put us too far out there. Again, given our charter as a transportation commission, I think that there's room for us to be flexible, but I'd like to think it through a little bit more and come back to the commission with that particular issue, but also some next steps in how we would proceed working with the county on the concept that's been kicked around as it relates to the Santa Paula branch line corridor and those types of things. So with Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me on that, that would be my preference.
Thank you very much. I know Darren and I had a pre-meeting and discussed this, and I wanted to make sure we had buy-in from the commission that was also your wish, was to make sure that we're supportive of this. This is only a receive and file, and this is the chance where we can, as a commission, provide direction. And I felt that as with CSAC and NACO, and we've got SCAG representation and Metrolink, that this would be something that we would want to support. As we have the May revise coming through, we have the budgets finalizing for the feds. This would be a next step, is how I was looking at it. So if that would be the case, is there any other direction that we would like to, that we've missed? Okay, so if we could, I'd like, Terry, thank you so much for being here. We also talk about this as I'm the chair of the EDC collaborative and broadband, and this is going to help our businesses so much. So thank you too. Can I get a motion to receive and file? Staff recommendation. Supervisor Huber was a first, and I saw Supervisor Ramirez as a second. And thank you, and roll call, please.
Commissioner Bill de la Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Enegren,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Johnson,
I think we've lost Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Judge,
Yes.
Commissioner LaVere,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
He's muted.
Sorry, having trouble unmuting again. Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobel,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tremblay,
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes, thank you so much, and that motion is approved. Next item, that's huge, by the way. I know I'm blowing through things, but that's a huge step, so thank you. VC's General Counsel, Mr. Mathis.
Yeah, Madam Chair, nothing to report. We do anticipate a brief closed session today, though.
Will there be anything reported out after the closed session?
There will be no reportable action, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on, we have our agency reports. Any report from SCAG? Hearing
Madam
none.
Chair, the report is brief because we did not have a transportation meeting yesterday. Yesterday with SCAG's, would have been SCAG's retreat that you would all been invited to in Palm Desert. It was virtual. I do again want to congratulate Supervisor and Commissioner Carmen Ramirez on making the second vice president slot for SCAG. She was appointed, I think they did the whole putting the officers in yesterday. That was the big thing we did. And that was about it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And our Regional Rail Authority, Metrolink.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Very briefly, because I've already spoken about Metrolink's recovery plan framework, but at the April 23 meeting, just to note that the board received a number of presentations, one on an accessibility and affordability study, very critical, particularly in regards to Metrolink's recovery plan framework, and then also two studies on its locomotive fleet modernization process and its rail fleet management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner, any questions?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I'm sorry if I
Yeah.
can just add to Vice Chair Tremblay's comments, if I
Yes,
may.
please.
I just wanted to make a quick announcement in regards to Metrolink. It was already mentioned from Darren that we are going to be having Saturday service. And just remind everyone that kids ride free on weekends on Metrolink trains. And that Metrolink has a 5-day flex pass, which is 5 day passes that you're able to use within the 30 days. And the month of May is Bike Month. Metrolink will be having their Bike to Work week, which is May 17th to the 21st. And if you have your bike when you are boarding Metrolink trains, it is free. You also have the opportunity to win a free electric bike by visiting metrolinktrains.com/bike-month. There you'll be able to get more information about Metrolink and how it's trying to get people off their vehicles and onto public transit. And then just lastly, if we recall, our CEO at Metrolink is leaving. She has taken the position of CEO at Metro, which is the second largest transit agency in our nation. She is the first woman and the first person of not first person, but a first woman of color to be able to hold that position as CEO. So we wish her well in that role. And then if you can just indulge me real quick, we kind of went through it real quick, but I just wanted to make quick mention in regards to Gold Coast Transit. And I apologize to Commissioner McDonald if I step on his toes on this one. On Monday, May 10th, they're going to be offering late night service, safe service, which is $2 to ride, and it's daily from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. and all people are allowed to use that. That's on Monday, May 10th, so next week. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to SLOSAN, Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Chavez, thank you for mentioning that. I had slipped my mind, but we do have flyers available for Gold Coast Transit for the West County users of that service. And if you would reach out to me, I will provide them to you in both English and Spanish, and you put them on your media channels to advertise that. We'd be very appreciative. In terms of LOSAN and Coastal Rail Coordinating Committee, I don't have any updates at this point, but I just want to say congratulations to Supervisor Ramirez on her election yesterday to second vice chair. I was proud to be part of the General Assembly that voted for her selection to that position. So good job, Carmen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. We have our California Association of Council of Government. Anything to report? No? Okay, then moving on to Cal Vance. Anything?
Really nothing to report, only that we have 80 vehicles in Ventura County that provide transportation to many of our customers throughout the county, mostly people going, excuse me, people going out and taking care of all our fruit and vegetables in the county. So it's pretty exciting there. Our next meeting is next week, May 13th.
Thank you very much. And is there anything else before we move into closed session? With that, thank you for all that have attended. We will not be reporting out for anything on our closed session. So we will move into closed session and we will see you at the next board meeting on June 4th. Thank you.
Chair Long.
Yes.
We're going to adjourn. We're not adjourning yet exactly, but we were asked to adjourn in
we'll be adjourning to closed session. So we would be, Madam Chair, you'll recall in honor of Senator Mills, I'll call him the godfather of public transportation in California.
Thank you so much. And then we adjourn on his behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. So Madam Chair, if you could just give us a few moments to clear the attendees, we'll get started on closed session.
And it looks like we're still recording, so.
Okay, thank you.